way that it works is that we get together in June and start talking whenever most people are wrapping up this year, the current year. We're meeting already and starting to brainstorm ideas about the reopening of school. And it's kind of, I think, shared decision making at its best, at its purest. You know, everybody just comes to the table, no agendas, just wanting the best opening ceremony, focusing on one thing: how do we kick school off? And we always have all these grand ideas. It seems so easy when it's the calm, quiet, lazy days of summer to dream big and talk about all the things that you might want to do. At one point, we were actually researching having a real hot air balloon right behind me here. I was a little bit nervous that it would be like that scene, as Dave said, in The Wizard of Oz, where I get put in the basket and go sailing away into the distance. But Jumbotron, no problem. It sounded great, when we were first talking about it. Then August hits, and the August days always race by so quickly. And the meetings become more intense and a little bit more frantic. And the next thing you know, we're in full preparation mode. Coffee mugs are flying in. People are grabbing all kinds of coupons from all great local businesses that you're going to all get a free cup of coffee from on your way out. And everything gets frantic. But we pull it together. And then we start talking with the tech crew. And I mean, I just got to call out Andrew and Charlie and Nick and Doug and Dan and Amy, the whole crew. It's a lot to put this together. They were here in the dark last night. Literally, the lights went out at 9 p.m. exactly. I had to call Joe and get him turned back on remotely. So we pulled it together. So it takes a lot of work. I also want to thank to all the students who got up, ended their summer vacation a little bit early and came out here to be part of this ceremony. They are student leaders. They are leaders. I thank Dave Versacki for taking on the board presidency, especially this year in these challenging times, and of course to Dr. Abdu and soon to be Dr. Collins for their incredible devotion day in and day out to this district and for their wise words today. So here we are. In a few minutes, we're going to wrap up here, and we'll all head out into a brand new year. Last year, we had some fun joking about keeping the plane in the air, right? Now, no analogy is perfect, but I think it served as a decent way to summarize the tension and apprehension and exhaustion that we all felt. I did get a number of emails, especially early in the year, of people saying, it's not in the air, it's hitting the trees. So point well taken. So I'd like to suggest that we put that behind us and we pick a different analogy this year. And I'd like to suggest the hot air balloon. Why? Well, first of all, you may be surprised to know that according to the National Transportation Safety Board, ballooning is the safest air sport in aviation. A nice, safe way to travel, as opposed to a plane skimming above the trees, bouncing in turbulence, and skidding to a landing. The NTSB says that the number one danger to a balloonist is the power line, followed closely, apparently, by leaning too far over the edge of the basket. But balloon pilots, honestly, are known for being incredibly conscientious about their craft, and all the statistics show that ballooning is very safe. A hot air balloon works on the mechanical principle of buoyancy. A blob of heated air is less dense than all the surrounding air, so it's pushed by surrounding forces to the top, in the same way that a less dense cork would be pushed to the surface of the water if it was let go at the bottom of a tank. Now, as the air in the balloon gets warmer, it gets less dense, and the balloon rises through the cooler air. Once it's at altitude, the heating jets will be turned off. Now, the ride can be windy and loud on the way up, but the instant the jets are turned off, the balloon is carried along at exactly the same speed as the moving air. So there's no sense of wind, no sense of motion, no noise at all. The result is an incredibly peaceful silence and stillness on board the balloon. Balloons are unique among flying vessels because they can't really be steered. They move in the general direction of the prevailing winds, and the experienced pilots are able to understand the complex currents in the wind and raise and lower the balloon into these currents to provide some sense of control. Now, competitions among balloon pilots are never about speed. They measure the ability of the pilot to deal with the multitude of variables and to guide the balloon as close to the target as possible. Did you know that balloons never float along at the same altitude, ever? When the heat is on, they're rising. When the burners are off, the air begins to cool and the balloon slowly begins to descend. The balloon only hits equilibrium with the outside air momentarily, and they're always in a cycle of rising and falling. The very first balloon ascent was in a tethered vessel in Paris, 1783. It was engineered by a team led by Jean-François Pilatre de Rosier, a chemistry and physics teacher. The same inventor, it was tethered so the balloon would go up and stay there. But the same inventor, the teacher, wanted to fly it untethered, so he petitioned King Louis XVI to allow that to happen. Apparently, the king thought it would be best to have the first free flight be loaded with criminals rather than the valuable inventor. So he asked for that, but the teacher-inventor did the right thing. He insisted on being first. He insisted on being the daring one on the front line of this new adventure. Most of us have seen balloons in action, right? Some up by my house will fly across Charlton now and then. We have a big balloon festival up in Glens Falls. They're capable, though, of flying much further than that as well. In 1991, a team headed by Richard Branson of Virgin Atlantic successfully made the first trans-Pacific flight from Japan to northern Canada. Now, as a new teacher, I was so inspired by this. I was a science teacher. I was so inspired by this flight. I created a science unit for my 8th graders. It was centered around this trans-Pacific balloon adventure. We followed the lead-up and the preparations for the journey. We planned out the balloons. They were about the size of a large garbage bag. We cut them to scale from colored tissue paper. And we planned to fly our creations in the fields around Iroquois Middle School, where I taught. Now, for a heat source, I purchased Sterno fuel, solid fuel cans. 8th graders, giant balls of flying flammable tissue paper, and Sterno fuel. What could possibly go wrong with that? But it did work. The general principle of it worked. They did rise. They did soar into the air, great lesson on buoyancy and density. But then most of them burned spectacularly in mid-flight, a few of them drifting towards the roof of the school. So fortunately, Richard Branson was much more successful than my 8th graders that year, but it did have fun. It got me a reputation for having a really cool class. McGrath burned stuff up. And as an untenured teacher, I didn't get fired, so the risk was worth it. So that distance record set by the Virgin Atlantic balloon was broken in 1999 when balloon pilots Bertrand Piccard and Brian Jones circumnavigated the globe in just under 20 days. If you're wondering, the record for the highest flight was set at 69,852 feet. That's over 13 miles up in a balloon over Mumbai, India in 2005. Balloons are creative and beautiful and colorful and bright and larger than life. And so are our kids. We're starting the 106th school year for the Burnt Hills Ballston Lake Central School District, and each of you sitting here will have a part in welcoming back and educating our 3,155 students. They are creative and beautiful and colorful and bright and larger than life. This is the one day in the year that we gather as a whole district, all of us together. Rather than starting the year on a plane struggling to take off, let's think of this journey as a hot air balloon. First and foremost, like the conscientious balloon pilot, we will keep them safe. We will look out for those power lines and keep them from leaning too far over the edge. Masks will be a part of that safety plan as we begin the year. No one really likes them, and I'm sure they will pose a significant impediment to teaching for many. But the people we trust to advise us on these things recommend them right now, and for the greater good, we will do our part. But safety goes much further than masks, of course. As we approach the 20th anniversary of 9/11 and see evidence all around us that the world is a dangerous place, we commit to all the things that we've been trained to on our buses, around our buildings, and in our classrooms to keep our students safe. The ride ahead will be a little bit windy at times, but if we do things right, when we get going and the burners are turned off, there will be times of incredibly peaceful silence and stillness. You will remember why you do this. You will close your classroom door and feel normalcy again as lessons unfold, ideas are shared, and new insights are developed. You will glance up in that mirror or look down that lunchroom line and see eager, happy faces who appreciate what you do. You will walk down that hallway or look across that office desk and see young people who need you. You will remember why you're taking this flight. And remember, like the skillful pilot who only has so much ability to direct a balloon, you are just one part of the complex set of currents and forces that are influencing the kids in front of you. Seek to understand those forces, to detect and anticipate the currents so that our time with them is as effective as possible in influencing the direction of their life. Remember, it's not speed that counts, but rather success in moving them as close as possible to the target. You are the teacher, the driver, the custodian, the administrative assistant, the principal on the front line. You are not content to stay tethered or let somebody else ride in the basket of the balloon in your place. You signed up for an adventure, and we're ready to go. Like the balloon that's in a constant cycle of up and down, we will have good days and bad days. Look out for each other along the way. Lift up a colleague when they're struggling. Be understanding when someone's having a bad day. Laugh during the ups and lean on a friend when you're feeling down. Stay healthy, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And when you are at your best, you can give your best to others. So climb aboard. In this balloon, we can take our kids to the highest of heights. We can show them the beauty of the fields and the hills, the farms and the neighborhoods of Charlton and Ballston and Clifton Park and Glenville. We can show them the kindness and the values of the local community that they live in. But we can also take them to the highest of heights, across the oceans and around the world. Balloonists have a tradition of carrying champagne on board and consuming it upon the final touchdown. Apparently, this dates back to times when the balloons would unexpectedly come billowing down into a farmer's field or a backyard across Europe. The balloon invader would offer the surprised landowner a glass of champagne to celebrate. All would be well. So let's plan on the same thing. Let's light the burners and lift off. The ballooner's prayer, traditionally recited before a journey, based on an old Irish blessing, says, "May the winds welcome you with softness. May the sun bless you with its warm hands. May you fly so high and so well that God joins you in laughter and sets you gently back into the loving arms of Mother Earth." So let's rise up away from the tethers that have held us back these 18 months and soar into the 2021-22 school year. Let's do our best. Let's use all of our collective skill to get as close to the target as we can. And when we come down softly in June, we'll celebrate. Have a great year.